Hi there, Andy Ron with Montana Land Source with this week's short video summary of the Montana Land Report for August 4th, 2021. We put out the land report every Wednesday. It goes out via email to over 5,000 recipients, and it recaps the week's activity in the Montana land market. This week, as last week, a light in the Montana land market, 25 property updates, whereas we were seeing as high as 50 in prior weeks. This week, one property back on the market, 4 new listings, which is relatively low, 9 pending sales, 5 price changes, 1 revised listing, and 5 sold. So not very many new properties entering the market. Quite a few pendings, only a few solds. It looks like we might be experiencing a slowdown. It might be seasonal. We're heading towards getting into the middle of summer. We've also had a lot of wildfires in Montana. It's very hot, very dry, lots of wildfires going on. That's been a concern for showing properties. Air quality's been bad. Luckily, we did get some rain in parts of Montana over the last week that has helped, but overall, very hot, very dry, and lots of wildfires going on. A reminder, we do have fire layers on our map in the map app in mtlandsource.com. You can select wildfire layers and see mapped perimeters and up-to-date fire information on that map app, so check that out. In news this week, there was a large public land transaction, the BLM acquisition, that was denied. I wrote a bit of a blog piece on that. There's some interesting factors going into that issue, appraisal factors, whatnot. The landowners rejected the appraisal that the Department of Interior put together as far as the value of that land and what they were willing to pay for that acquisition. So interesting dynamics going on there. This is in the area of the American Prairie Foundation, the American Prairie Reserve. They weren't involved in any way in this transaction, but they have been major purchasers in that area for conservation purposes, yet their purchases are not allowed by federal regulations in the appraisal of that property, and that was a disappointment to the sellers, to the landowners looking to do that project. BLM and Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation were working together on that to try to buy an 11,000 acre ranch on the lower Muscle Shell. So you can get to the link of my blog on that in the land report or on the news page at mtlandsource.com. Also in news, tomorrow is the monthly meeting of the Montana Farm and Ranch Brokers here out of Billings. In lieu of our regular meeting, I'm giving a presentation. The Billings Chamber is giving an short event on housing and the land market that I'm presenting to, and so we're having our meeting there in lieu of our regular meeting. So the meeting won't be recorded or available on Zoom, so our apologies to our statewide participants. That meeting will only be available in person here in Billings. And coming up later in the month, the Bozeman Farm and Ranch Brokers Group, I believe, is putting together a panel on carbon credits. Details have not fully come out on that yet, but that event is on the events page at mtlandsource.com, and we will fill that in as we get the information. But Don there in Bozeman, Don Vanneman, is trying to put together a panel on carbon credits and carbon markets. That's a very hot topic in the land market right now in Montana and in the West. We have recorded a podcast with Chris Mayhews on that topic, which is very informative if you're interested in that. And the newest release of the Ranch Investors podcast, we have Roger and Betsy Inderland out of Big Timber, Montana. Very progressive, very innovative ranchers, multi-generational ranchers in the Big Timber area. That podcast is actually going to be a 2-part episode. We've only released the first part of that, but very, very interesting content. Like we said in the intro to that podcast, they tend to epitomize much of what we've tried to focus on and talk about in the Ranch Investor podcast from a landowner, land operator perspective. So do check out that podcast at mtlandsource.com or anywhere where you get podcasts. That is the news for this week. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.